Hey gamers, welcome back. This is Eviee with What's Your MMO. I have for you today AMK, who is God Voice, faction leader, and the BG of Devoted Legacy for the Asmodean faction. So let's get right to it. Sit back, relax, load your game up, and take a listen.
I think the faction's doing well together, working together. We got a lot of our top legions working together, and that alone is a good morale booster for the faction. When you see the top legions working together, it gives people more of a hope.
Exactly.
See, I've always been a part of the leadership on this faction since I came over. Back when I first got over to the server, because DL actually originated on Zakai, and I helped run the faction over there for a while, but when they did the huge mergers and transfers opened up, Zakel was one of the first servers where all the Asmos just kind of took off. So it was really hard, because we were just completely outnumbered. It was a lot worse than this server is. There's a lot of people, especially people that are, big BGs and big with the faction that are from Zakel. That's how a lot of, like for instance, me and Zuni originated from Zakel, so we knew each other coming over. So, there's a lot of history with Zakel, and I helped with the leadership on that server for a while. DL actually was one of the larger legions on the server for a while until people just started transferring off, and it was probably 15 of my members that we all decided after a while it was enough. Back then, Gelk forts, there were no safe zones. You could get all the way to the main fortress, and we couldn't even go outside the gates. There was an alliance there on both sides all day long. You couldn't quest, you couldn't really do anything. So we moved over to Israfel, and then when I first moved over here, Asmos were doing good. That's one of the reasons why we chose Israfel. And the first thing I did was, at that time, it was Gigi who was running the faction. So I got a hold of him. I told him I wanted to be a part of it. And then for a long time, I was doing a lot of the pug alliances. I would get, a few of whatever members I could, and then I would pug, and I was helpful to him because I was doing the pug alliances, and coming from running a large legion and doing a lot of the siege stuff, I've always been good at running my alliance, keeping people together, because you can't just assume everybody's going to listen to God Voice or listen to the league alerts and know. It's a lot of times it falls on the alliance leaders to keep those same commands going out. You know what I mean? And I got into, I became real good friends with Gigi, and then I got, for a while there, I was one of his main CMDs. I helped doing a lot of the orchestrating behind the scenes, basically. And that's one of the reasons how DL became such a large legion, is being out with the forts, and people that would pug in my alliances later on would want to join the legion. And then after Gigi kind of stopped leading because of, I don't know, we just started getting overran. I'm sure you've heard of Mortrid. He did, a lot of people don't like him, but he really did do a good job leading their faction. When he wanted people out, people came out, and people listened to him. So, at that time, with him in charge, they were doing good as a faction. And we held the Abyss for probably 7 months, and they weren't coming out. This is back when forts were vuln, Abyss forts were vuln probably 3 nights a week, and we had Asmos out there every night when it was, vulnerable, and we would sit there for, an hour doing nothing, and that's kind of when the faction just kind of started dying down on sieges, because it was just, it was just boring. And then when the Elios did finally make their comeback, most people were just so burnt out of it. It's just kind of what put us in the rut that we were in for the next patch. And then when 3.0 hit, Kimberly was leading the Elios, and they started hitting Gelk forts. They were flipping it a lot and taking over our Marchitan and get our Maestress and getting all that gear, and that's when I stepped up to try to lead the Gelk forts. I got a hold of a few of the other BGs, and we kind of made a group of legions that kind of went and kept them blue. Because I mean, the majority of the faction was more interested in the Tia forts. Obviously, it's the new patch. It's the same thing now. We have problems with getting people out to Tia because it's not the new thing. The majority of the faction's always going to want to be more or less a part of the new patch. So for the majority of 3.0, I led all the Gelk forts. Kept getting legions. After a while, people seeing that they were flipping, and other legions wanted their name on the fort, and I always did a rotation. For the legions that were coming out, we would rotate the forts in between our names, and that was a good way to get other legions involved. And then we came to 4.0, and Vladarina went through, and she got a hold of a lot of the BGs about working together again, like we did a long time ago when we did hold the Abyss, and we all got together, and this is where we're at now.
So do you see
I think the whole
between the 3.0?
Oh yeah, I mean, I obviously Asmos are working better together, and a lot of it has to do with putting the Legion in a neutral name, because I mean, even look at the Elios there. I mean, they're having issues with getting people out when it's not when it's in a certain Legion's name, because people would rather it flip. And I mean, that's always been a problem for any one of the patches. I mean, Legions want their name on the fort. I mean, it works well for Legions that are recruiting. They get getting your name on the fort shows that you are your Legion's doing stuff, obviously, and people want to be in the Legion. And then I mean, just especially like Gelk forts, there are Legion only rewards. There are actually BG only rewards where only the BG will get it. And in 4.0, coming into 4.0, all these Legions getting together, to try to flip the fort, that was a major issue, is everybody wanted, well, whose name's going on the fort first, when is my Legion going to be on the fort, and putting it in that Legion, I mean, it really kind of just solved all those issues, because anybody can be added to it, they can do the content, they can leave, and it's just, even now that, we've done it, I even seen when the Elios took a fort and put it in the Elios faction, because I mean, it really is just a great idea. It cuts out the biggest drama with forts. The biggest drama with forts has always been whose Legion's name goes on the fort.
Right, and I like the idea of giving everybody the opportunity with the different artwork on there too. I think that's kind of neat. It helps to make everybody feel, I think, that they have an opportunity to be a part of that bigger picture. Something little, but I think it means, to certain people,
Little,
it means something,
Little things are helping bring people together.
Yeah, you guys, like I said,
it's a neutral
job.
Legion, so.
Yeah, you guys just did it's just, when the light bulb went on, I was just so excited. Once the light bulb went on, it took a little while, but, I got there. The other thing I was going to say is the time consumption. When I spoke to Karos, we had talked about how it becomes a second job, so to speak. Do you find that as well, or are you guys do you share that kind of responsibility with
Oh,
the group?
it really does. No, it's very, especially being in the leadership, because we are the ones that we have to have our alliances. Like Devoted Legacy, for instance. I mean, we're recruiting our alliance an hour and a half before vulnerability. That way, we're together. We are out there, holding wherever we have, the faction coming to bind. We need Asmos out there, keeping the Elios to a minimum. Just holding the different points so that especially with the new forts, I mean, to get from place to place, a lot of time you have to switch through bases. So you need people out there early to, get there, try to keep it safe so that the faction can, because a lot of times, especially with like Pug members, people are teleporting from place to place by themselves. There's not a mass of Asmos, and that's why, like, my Legion does it. We get together early, that way. I mean, and I don't always fill a full alliance right away, but I'll get half of alliance of my members, and then we'll just start, holding the different places, and, it keeps the Alios numbers down to a minimum when you got 12 people moving from place to place, at a time. And then there's always, leadership. I love doing it. I love being a part of the faction. I love leading. I just, it's not about the spotlight, and a lot of people tend to think that it is, and it's not. It's just, it's being a part of the different CMDs, and getting to know people and just working together. That's why I do it, just because I love seeing people work together. I love our faction coming together. I like seeing sieges where we got 300 people. That makes me feel good. That shows that us as leaders are doing a good job. The faction's coming together. It's people are working together. But it really is time consuming. You have to basically even your real life has to be kind of worked around siege times. When there's an important siege come up, you got to make sure you're online. I can never make the earlier ones, the 3 p.m. because I work I don't get home until 3:34. But on all the ones that are night sieges, and I do Gelk too, so that's. I always have to make sure I'm online, and if not, I always have to have a deputy or somebody else that can fill my role while I'm not online. So it definitely is time consuming. And especially some of the bigger leaders, like Valerina or me, or we get PMs non-stop during the day, people asking, what's going on tonight, are we pushing tonight, or just asking about, a big thing I notice is, and I don't know if you've been in the command vent, but the way it's set up is there is a room where, it's just the leaders, and we talk about strategy, we get, what's going on. We have certain people placed in certain places, so we have our information coming in, and then all the different alliances have their own channel, and they can go down there and talk, and then you have what we call the God voice, which generally is usually me, and when we need the faction to move, I speak out through the whole event, and everybody in one of those channels will hear it. And it has to be set up that way, because if you think about it, if you had everybody in the same channel, you're going to have 60, 70 people that all think, well, we should be doing this, we should be doing this, why aren't we doing this? And while we're leading, those PMs are nonstop. You're always getting a PM from some random person like, well, why are we calling people here, or why are we pulling people here? And it's because a lot of people don't see the whole picture, you know what I mean?
Right. But I think that's the difference between those of us who are more than willing to follow, because leading is such a huge responsibility, and those of you that lead is just the way you think and the way you see things.
Yep, because you can't just think about what your faction is doing either. You also have to anticipate what the other faction is doing, and especially moving people from place to place. You got to watch, you got to kind of have information. You have to have sins out watching, what they're doing, because you don't want to mass all your guys right next to all their guys, because then it's just a huge mess. And
right, and you also have to have an idea when you're setting up like that. And for most people, it's a given that a sin can go into hide. But even knowing in your group or your alliance and your league and all the rest, the skills.
Knowing each of the classes, especially like with the DP skills, like calling for all the glads of 4K AoE, that's huge. Especially when they all run up, because it's a knockdown skill. It's going to knock their front line down, and then it's going to give the DPS a chance to finish them all off. What we don't. And then, you got like 4K pulls from the temps that are very useful, and obviously when you're burning the DD, to call all the channers to pop WoW, to give everybody, that burst of DP or DPS. Like, for instance, Gelk forts. Whenever I'm leading the Gelk forts, as soon as we get on the deity, the first thing I'll do is tell everybody to save their burst skills. Because when the gate comes up at 60%, it's time based. Every like 15 seconds that it's up, it spawns more mobs. So if you don't get it down in time, I mean, you're just going to be so overwhelmed with, you know, the baller down there that you'll just end up wiping.
What is it about Aion that has kept you here? When you think about, I don't know if you've played other MMOs and all the other games that are out there, but there's obviously something about Aion that has kept you here, or made you come back, or want to stay. What is it?
For me, it's my Legion. I've led the Devoted Legacy for 2.5 years now, and I put a lot of time into, you know, trying to keep people happy. And DL's always been one of the larger legions on their server, and I mean, it's not easy to run a large legion. And I mean, if you ask any BG who does have a large legion, I mean, they will probably tell you that, you know, it's. But for me, I mean, there's been times where it's been times where, you know, like especially with the eye, and I mean, it was really just a numbers thing, trying to get in there in PvP, and I mean, there are definitely times where I have wanted to quit the game, and it's just running the Legion has really kind of kept me here, having a lot of people count on you, and I mean, the reward is always there. I mean, when you help people, people tell you, you know, you do a great job as a BG, you know, and people grouping together. I mean, obviously, I love the PvP in the game. I've valued the PvP in this game above any of the other MMOs I've played. But for me, it's definitely Devoted Legacy that's kept me here.
This life that we make up, are you let down? Do you give up? Are you let down by me in this life that we've made? This fake life that someone made up in their heads gave to us. We all try to climb up, but they throw rocks at our flesh. We all think the same shit. We all dream the nightmare, this fake world on a movie screen. We watch as our lives break up, but one day, if we stand up with a fake smile, we could wake up. The real world is just too much to take in for all of us. We all try to climb up, but they throw rocks at our flesh. In this life that we make up, are you let down? Do you give up?